Hey, it's Ace, and if you haven't heard, the brand new Ace at Large podcast comes out every Thursday. And what the Ace at Large podcast is built around these days is the idea that you are not alone. Whatever you may be going through, whatever you may be dealing with, you are not alone. And what we need for the podcast is you. We need your stories, your ideas, your concepts. Tell us how you overcame something. Tell us what you dealt with in life and how you conquered it, because the idea is what you've dealt with in the past is going to make it easier for someone else to deal with whatever it is they might be going through. And that's something special. So you've got all the information down here below me on the screen. Contact me. Tell me about your story. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about what you've overcome. And we'll see if we can't provide others with the help that they need. All right. It's the Ace at Large podcast, available every Thursday. And I would love to hear from you.
This is the Radio Button Network. And this is the new Ace at Large podcast. Ace at Large podcast. Now, your host, Ace.
So we talk a lot about why we're here each week, what we're here to do. First and foremost, you are here, hopefully, to find out that you are not alone in whatever it is that you are dealing with in life. And also here to overcome whatever it is that you're dealing with in life. This whole thing started because when my daughter passed away, I was kind of overwhelmed by the amount of people and the outpouring of love, people that came out to support me and my family throughout that very difficult time. That continues to this day. But in the process, I began to wonder, what about people who don't have a radio family to support them and don't have good friends and family to support them? What do they do? And thus, this version of the Ace at Large podcast was born, and it's morphed itself into a variety of different things. And today, more than anything else, I want you to walk away with the idea that you can overcome whatever it is you feel is holding you back in life. Whether it's real or imagined, whatever it is, there is never a time that you can't overcome whatever that is. Now, to that point, I will give you someone today who has overcome a great deal, starting out at a very young age in life. At a time when a lot of people feel like, well, life's just against me. This is the way I was brought up. This is who I am. This is how it's going to be. This is just what life is. He decided, I'm going to take a bad situation and make it better. Just so happens that the best thing that's happened to him is quite some time is becoming my father-in-law. That's his good fortune. But that's neither here nor there today, because that's not what we're talking about. Seriously, I want you to meet who is my father-in-law, which may sound weird, especially if you're watching on YouTube, because he is a couple of years younger than me.
Just a few.
This is Steve Thurston, who is a very successful businessman and has accomplished a great deal in life, yet it didn't always start out this way. And first, thanks for coming on and talking about this, because I've known you for a few years now, and I am exceedingly impressed with what it is that you have accomplished and continue to accomplish. And I didn't know the depth of the story until you and I started talking about doing this. I kind of had a little bit of an idea, but we had never really gotten into a lot of the details. But first, where did you grew up in Florida?
I grew up in Florida, yes.
Okay.
And first of all, thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of this, because I've listened to your podcast, and I believe it is impactful, and it's changing lives, so I appreciate the opportunity.
So talk a little bit about your childhood, kind of set the stage for everybody, what life was like for you as a kid.
Well, I grew up in a small town in Florida, in Zephyr Hills, and we came from a fairly dysfunctional family unit. Although we did have a mother who loved us and cared for us, but alcoholism was pretty prevalent in the whole family unit between mother, father, uncles, and so there was a lot of hostility on the weekends, especially after the work week, and a lot of turmoil, and just not a great foundation to start planning for your future in life.
When you say a lot of hostility on the weekends, so the work week is done now, would you dread, like, oh man, everybody's going to be around this week. I know this is going to go south, that kind of thing. It was an understood thing. The weekends were going to be tough.
Absolutely. Yeah. We actually had certain neighbors that we knew we could escape to, and they would stand at their door and not allow my father to get us from that home, and they would actually stand at the door at gunpoint and just tell him he needs to go home and he'll see us tomorrow. So there was a lot of fighting on the weekends, a lot of disruptions.
Yeah, here's one of the things that you said that I found interesting. you didn't worry about things like you always had a roof over your head, food to eat, that kind of stuff. What you were overcoming, or what you were, I guess, the hand you were dealt, so to speak, was this alcoholism. This was an emotional turmoil that seemed to always exist as a child. Would that be fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. And when my biological father and mother divorced, and she entered into another relationship, unfortunately, who became my stepfather, great man, great provider, but he was an alcoholic. And so we went from one environment that was very dysfunctional to another one. And he had some tendencies to be violent as well while he was drinking. And he ultimately, my mother ultimately gave him the ultimatum: quit drinking or I'm gone. Well, he did, and he's still sober today. Unfortunately, my mother did not, and so he couldn't live with her. And so they ultimately divorced, and my mother to this day still, although she's not aware of it, but she's an alcoholic. And so
wow. So she made the ultimatum: you've got to quit drinking or else I'm going to leave. So he quit, and then he realizes, well, I can't deal with this anymore. You've got to quit earlier, that kind of thing, and it all kind of all fell apart in the long run. So what kind of an impact did that alcoholic mom, alcoholic dad, alcoholic stepdad, what kind of an impact did that have on you going into your teenage years?
Well, I think the biggest impact was, as I look back as a parent now and how you guide your children to planning for their future, I really didn't have that guidance. So I wasn't making the best decisions as a young person. I was a pretty good student, was an athlete, but just looking for a way to escape that environment and just not having. You see some other friends that have a more normalized childhood, and you don't really realize as you're growing up in that environment, it's the only environment you know. So you don't know that it's wrong or not healthy. And so I decided, had a bright idea. My cousin and I, we're going to run away. And so at the age of 14, we find ourselves traveling across country, running away. And I don't want to go into details because I don't think it's relevant, but some laws were certainly broken in that process, and there was some consequences to that. And at that point, I had to make a decision as a young person that I can continue to travel down a negative path, or I can turn my life around and work hard and start setting some goals for myself.
Okay, so this was at the age of 14 or right after you were 14?
14 to 15,
Okay.
right in that age.
Okay.
Range.
So you run away at 14.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever happens, and then you're 15. And at 15, you realize, okay, I gotta do something different because this isn't working out for me.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm to be honest if I actually realized that at 15. I think it took a few years past that, but I think that's when it started.
Well, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Was there a moment that you can look back on now and realize that's where the wake up call came?
Right.
Like, do you is there a time that you can look back and where you have that moment where you look around and realize, okay, I got to change something here? Did that occur, or was it just an evolution over time?
I think it was an evolution over a few years. Once I got done dealing with some of the repercussions from some bad decisions, and then it was time to move past that. That's when I think I made a conscious decision that I need to move in a completely different direction, do a 180.
So a lot of people have been in a similar situation where they made some bad decisions. And then you said having to deal with the repercussions of some bad decisions. Was that easy to leave those things behind? And I ask because there are some things in life, anytime I've done something stupid, I have a hard time like moving past. Like I will still look back years later like, God, I wish I hadn't done that. It was dumb, that kind of thing. I have a hard time letting go of those things. Was that easy for you to do when you moved past them, or did you hang on to them at all? If my question makes any sense.
Yeah, it does, absolutely. And I think it was fairly easy for me, and I think really, I think I was reading a book, and I don't remember who the author was, but basically it said if you let your past become your, if you live in the past, your past will become your future. And so that was pretty profound to me. So I think I made a decision that there's nothing I can do to change anything that I've done to this point, but I can change what happens from this point on. And so I didn't really dwell on any of my mistakes. I knew and understood that there was going to be some obstacles because of them, but I was, I didn't have any path but forward to go, and so I was pretty strong-willed, I think, with that.
So did it affect your relationship with your family at all? Because it sounds to me like clearly you're trying to step outside of this somewhat dysfunctional family relationship. I mean, obviously, when you just said you ran away and all that, so you're trying to get away from that in some way. Now you're back. Was it difficult to, or did you have to remove yourself kind of from the family to go off and make better decisions, or was that hard at all?
No, because I think we're all at that point. All the siblings were fairly much adults, and everyone had kind of already moved on. I was the second to youngest, so
okay.
And they all took different paths. My brothers and sisters don't drink. I think my younger brother does, but for the most part, we all took different paths than what we were led to.
Okay, so you're about how old now? Let's say I was 17, 18?
Yeah, I would say I was around 18.
Okay.
18, 19. Yeah.
And was there a passion for something, or were you just searching, I've got to find a career, a job? Where did the direction come from in life?
Well, there really wasn't a passion per se, but my brothers worked at a company, a large company in Florida doing high-rise work. And so in the beginning, it was just go to work. And that's what I did. And I worked there, I think, for 10 or 11 years doing that, and then ended up switching professions.
Okay. So here are the basics as we know it. So Steve went through, obviously you heard there's a dysfunctional family. The childhood was difficult. And I would say anytime you are hiding out at someone's home and they have to pull a gun to keep your dad from coming in the house to get you, that's the kind of thing that doesn't leave you, does it?
No, that's something that kind of stays with you. And the weird thing is there's a lot of good times mixed in too. So it's kind of confusing as a child.
Sure. But that obviously has to have a tremendous impact on you going forward in life, which leads to some trouble, some issues. You move forward. Now you have this job. Now here's the thing that I hope everybody takes from this is that it's not an overnight transition into the man that you've become today. So if you think, well, they're about to tell us a story where he just flips the switch and things turn great all of a sudden, that's not how things work. The value of hard work, the value of understanding the process will tell you and give you an idea of exactly how Steve got to be where he is today, because it's a great, great story, and I think an inspirational story that we'll get into next. Hang on.
There's more of the new Ace at Large podcast next.
The Ace and TJ family is always on your phone on the Papa John's Ace and TJ app. Available at the Apple App Store, Google Play, and Amazon Marketplace.
Welcome back to the new Ace at Large podcast.
So we left off. This is and I find it interesting to say, this is my father-in-law, but more than anything, this is my friend, Steve, who happens to be my wife Amanda's stepfather. And we've left off with I think this is the most inspirational part of this story, because if you missed any part of this, I don't know why you would have. You can back it up and check it out. But in this story, if you missed it, Steve comes from a dysfunctional family, had some difficulties going through the years, and about the age of 17, 18, you started working for this high-rise company.
Correct.
And you worked there. They worked on high-rise buildings in Florida for, I think you said 10, 11 years, something like that. Correct. Was that just wake up, going to work every day, that kind of thing? Like,
it was.
I'm just doing the job. You weren't worried about, hey, I got to, move up the ladder and all that kind of stuff?
No, I absolutely wanted to move up the ladder. And really the only reason I left that company is I went up the ladder as high as I was going to go.
Okay.
And so I was, and of course I married Gigi during this time, this 11-year period and such. And Amanda was already there, and I was blessed with her, and when Stevie came along. So I realized, and you haven't asked me this question, but I realized pretty early on in my marriage that I didn't know how to be a father or a husband, because I didn't have any role models for that.
Right.
So that obviously led to some marital issues between Gigi and I.
Okay, well let's back up for a second, because here's the thing that I'm curious about. And I only have a way to ask this by using myself as an example. I had a conversation with a friend of mine years ago, one of my best friends. And he said, when did you know you were going to be successful? His name is Brett. And I said, Brett, I got to be honest, I never thought about that. I said, I don't know, because I never considered I wouldn't be. So, and I don't mean for that to sound bragging, but even as a kid, I never considered I wouldn't be successful. I mean, I don't think I've achieved what I wanted to yet, but it just didn't occur to me that I was not going to be a success at whatever I did. There was something within you that made you, there are a lot of guys that I know that I grew up with that you had a good job, you were there. Well, this is about as far as I can go with this company. But this is solid. I'll just keep doing this for years and years and years. But what was it that made you want to keep moving up the ranks, that made you want to keep getting better and improving yourself? And not just from the standpoint of work, but as we'll get into in a minute, from the standpoint of, being a father and a husband, can you identify whatever that was that you felt?
Yeah, and I don't know if it makes sense, but I think at that point in my life, it was just competitive nature. I just wanted to be the best at whatever I was doing, and I was never content. So I don't think I was looking at it from further down the road as far as success or failure or future. It was just in that moment, I wanted to be absolute best at whatever it was I was doing, and I'm still not content today.
Yeah.
So.
Is your family competitive?
Yes.
Okay, so everybody in the family, brothers and sisters, everybody's fairly competitive, kind of runs in the bloodline then.
Correct.
Okay, so you get married, and Gigi already has Amanda, you have Stevie, and you said you didn't know how to be a husband, how to be a father, because you'd never had any kind of a good role model, from that standpoint. What was that like? Were you frightened at first? Like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. Or did you think you knew and then you realized later, I had no idea what I was doing?
Yeah. I think I don't think that I thought I knew. I think I had an image in my mind of what it should be like. And I didn't have any directions on how to make it what I thought it should be like. So, my mother's been married 3 times. I think my biological father, was maybe married 4 times before he passed away. Uncles, aunts, it just didn't have any example of what a good family unit was.
Yeah.
So
then there were some issues. You said that the two of you and Gigi, your wife, separated and then got back together.
We did.
Which is a very uncommon thing. A lot of times people separate and they stay friends, but they don't get back together. So what transpires there? What do you think it was that brought you back together and left you in a position where you felt like, okay, now I'm ready to do what it is, to be the person I need to be, so to speak?
I think the catalyst to that was the kids. And of course, Stevie being biologically mine, we had split custody, and we spent as much time together after we separated as we did when we were together. Yeah. Because we were both wanting equal time with him. But I think the real catalyst was Gigi started attending a church, and I started attending with them. And then, I think we both wanted to reconcile our marriage, and through a little over a year of counseling, that's the direction. We didn't want our kids. I didn't want my son to grow up like I did with family unit being separated. Yeah. And Gigi and I loved each other. I had a lot of growing up to do, and she was more mature than I was at that point, and I just had to learn how to be a husband and a father.
And I'm just curious, because having gone through like marital counseling and like Christian counseling, that kind of stuff, a lot of times you find a lot of people just feel like they're speaking 2 different languages. And if you can kind of get the language part together and the understanding part together, things will kind of fall into place. Was it that situation, or it was you just realizing, it's me. I need to grow up and get better?
No, I think it was, and I think the reason our counseling worked, it was a husband and wife, the pastor and his wife. And I think that's what made it work, because she could speak to Gigi in a manner that no man could, and vice versa.
That's an interesting point. Okay.
Yeah. And so I think it was a matter of us learning how to communicate with each other, and more so me. I didn't have the tools to communicate with whatever I was dealing with emotionally, and so we were just going through the motions in the beginning part of our marriage, and I think once you get the tools to learn how to communicate with each other and to make compromises and learn what's important, what's not important, then you can have a healthy relationship.
This really doesn't have anything to do with the relationship, but it's kind of a question that I just thought of that may come into play later. Do you think because of your childhood in that situation, was there for lack of a better term, was there an anger or something within you that kind of fueled you at all, or were you angry at your parents or anything like that? Like, damn it, how come I didn't have a better childhood? Was there anything like that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I honestly don't. I think there was probably some. I don't want to use the word animosity, but I think there was some feelings of, you just quite don't understand why some of the things that transpired had to go that way. But.
And I asked because I know my dad and I were very close. He's been dead now 9 years, and we were very close. But as a kid, even though there were times that like some stupid stuff would happen, I would think this is like I don't know if I would be angry at my dad or my mom or both of them. Like, this is just stupid. I hate this, that kind of thing. And I know a lot of people experience that. So everything comes together. Marriage-wise, you kind of get on the same track. And then when is it that your career really began to take off? You worked for the high-rise place, and then you made a move to a different company.
Correct. Yeah, I went from – I wanted to get a broader experience in the construction industry as a whole. So I transitioned to a custom home builder and started building custom homes for a company as a superintendent. And I did that for several years, and then an opportunity came – for me to apply and test for a commercial contractor that did probably $380 million a year, a pretty good sized contractor. And I applied for that position, took the test, and passed it somehow, and began my career in the commercial construction industry. And ultimately that led to another opportunity and us relocating.
Okay.
So.
And then you found yourself climbing the ladder, doing better, becoming more successful, still working for other people, but you were eventually pretty high up, yet working 7 days a week,
Correct.
Like nonstop.
Correct.
And then finally realized, okay, this can't work because that was detrimental to the family. Okay, so let's kind of recap here. The reason I wanted to go through a lot of this in detail is because here's a guy who has come from a very dysfunctional childhood, had some troubles in life, overcame them, found the love of his life, got married, then got divorced, then got remarried. So like the dysfunction of early childhood, the trouble, the marriage, then getting divorced, like all those things are right down the line, the types of things that happen to people who experience that at a young age when you don't have a good family example. However, this is where the story begins to take a really great turn because you realize this is not going to work 7 days a week. I can't do this. I'm not able to be there as much as I need to be. It just wasn't working for y'all. And you decided to step out and take a chance on your own.
Correct. And we started a small construction company that was doing subcontract work for other general contractors.
Yeah.
And through a client that I had at the previous company, they asked me to bid on a project that required a general contractor's license. And so I agreed to do that. Unfortunately, I didn't have that state's license, so I went and took the test. The morning I was taking the test, my father passed away. Actually, I was on my way, leaving the hotel room to go take the test when I got the phone call. And so I had that project starting. I had to take the test, took the test, then went and drove to Tennessee and dealt with my father's passing. But at that point, we did that for a short duration, but starting a business is obviously challenging and financially it's tough. So got courted by two different companies to become a senior project manager at a firm, and it ultimately took one of those positions.
Yeah. And then when you started your company, you were telling me just a couple weeks ago, it just kind of came up in conversation one day that it was like, okay, what do we have that we absolutely don't need? Well, we don't. Yeah. We can live without cable. Yeah. We can live without all these because there was no money on your end, obviously, starting, and Gigi was working, but you went into it together. Like, this is what we're going to do. But to make it a success, we have to make some sacrifices. Yeah. And you cut back to the bare minimum.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was right about the time Amanda would have been starting college.
Yeah.
Was when we started that small company. So Yeah, it was definitely challenging, and it was going fine. Just had a great opportunity to go to work somewhere, and ultimately took it.
But again, it's okay. You assess the situation and realize, I think this will work, but sacrifices have to be made for long-term success. And like you cut way back on everything, and times we're lean there for a little while, and then ultimately it works out okay.
It does.
And I don't know how much you want to share. You're very successful today.
Well, I met my current business partner at that company that I went to, and we worked together for about 5 years there, and ultimately we decided that company was going in a negative direction as far as financially, with some decisions that were being made, and we started speaking about starting our own company. And so in 2014, that's what we did. And so here we are starting all over again, where I think David and we ate bologna sandwiches for about 6 months.
Yeah.
So we cut everything back out of our lives that we didn't need. Obviously, we couldn't draw a paycheck and starting the company, and the company took off, and we've been extremely fortunate and blessed, and we got great employees, and it's been wonderful.
Yeah, I'm impressed by. I know nothing about the construction business, nothing. But I know just in talking to Steve and having met your partner, David, and the way people speak of you, who you've done business with, one of the key things that I think you take a lot of pride in is the fact that you treat people the right way, that they are taken care of. I mean, it's work, it's business, but the fact that you do it in the right way, that you're honest with them. You seem to have a wonderful reputation among people for the work that you do. Obviously, that's very important to you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's recap. Alcoholic family, childhood, overcame it. Troubles in teens, overcame it. Divorce, overcame it. Worried about, cutting back to the bare minimum and building a life together, overcame it. It's that continual belief that you can make it better. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely.
You always believed, I can do better, I can be better, I can make the situation better. And today you're very successful. And I want to talk about a couple of other things, a couple of keys that if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I don't have this or I didn't have that. Well, Steve didn't have any of that either. And there may be a few keys that can help you overcome whatever it is you're going through, and why it's important to help others. Next.
There's more of the new Ace at Large podcast next.
Hey, it's Ace, and right now when you bundle Killingsworth Termite Protection with Pest Control, you can save over $200 a year. Visit them at thebiggreenk.com. And remember, your family and home are Killingsworth.
Welcome back to the new Ace at Large podcast.
All right, today's all about what you can overcome, because you can overcome anything. The key is believing that you can overcome it. So this is Steve, my friend, my father-in-law, and he's overcome a tremendous amount in his life to become very successful at what it is that he does. If you had to pick one thing that you would say is the key, the single most important decision that you've made, is there one that stands out like this is the single most important decision that I have made in my life?
Well, Mary and Gigi.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's hard to nail down one very most important, but I would say asking Christ to come into my heart was the most important decision I ever made. That's affected who I am and where I'm at today.
Yeah.
And as far as business wise, being willing to help other people and being generous with the resources that you're given, I truly believe that all that comes back to you tenfold, and you're blessed, and you continue to be blessed as long as you're willing to share your resources.
What I like about one of the things that I like most about Steve and Gigi, his wife, are the way they do a lot of stuff that's like, it's just done. They no need for anybody to know. It's just kind of handled. That's handled. They help a lot of people in a variety of different ways, in more ways than I'm even aware of, but they do it without fanfare. Not everybody needs to know that, their company's doing this for someone or they're doing that to help someone. They do a lot of things, and oftentimes it's just little things to help people out, but it's done without fanfare, which means it's done for the right reasons. I think it's interesting that you point out that marrying Gigi was kind of as a decision, was kind of the first step to really bringing things in line, because that kind of led you into a lot of different paths that worked out well for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as I look back on my life and you look at this decision, that decision you make, and not all decisions are good, but there's certainly decisions that really directed the path you were on. And just like relocating here, redirected our path to ultimately where we are now, and redirected your path so you and Amanda are together. And I think the most important thing to be successful is, one, don't use there is no meter for success. Success is if you're healthy, happy. If you wake up in the morning and you're the guy that picks up the garbage and you're happy doing that, you're successful. Yeah. And I don't know that there's any formula other than get up every day, do the absolute best you can, and be the best person you can, and get up the next day and repeat it until you achieve what it is you're after. And just don't give up.
For people who have experienced the types of things that you've been through in life, but they're not able to let go of them yet, what would you say to them about how important that is? And a lot of times people know, I need to let go of this, but they just can't seem to break free from whatever has happened in the past. What would you say to them? Because I think that's a really important thing for people to hear.
Yeah, I think as a general rule that you shouldn't focus any of your energy on anything that you can't directly control. You can't go back in time and change any decision that you've made. There's nothing you can do about it. It's done. I think that's what separates the most elite athletes, specifically golfers. I mean, they can make the worst shot in the world and it's over with. And I think as people, we have to have that mentality. You will never get anywhere in life if you're focused on where you were yesterday. You have to move on.
That's a great point. You have to treat life in many ways like a safety or a cornerback does in the NFL, because they point out that is the position that has to have the shortest attention span. Yes. Because you're going to get burned on a play, and it happens. You're going to get burned badly. And the next play, if you don't come back and forget about it, you're going to get burned again. So you've got to let that go and finally move on to something else.
And the only time those guys make it on a highlight reel is when they get burned.
Right.
I mean, they have to have a short memory.
That's exactly right. I hope that by sharing some stories of people who are parts of this radio family and people who are close to me, that we've given you some tools, if nothing else, some inspiration to be able to move forward. You know that I love your ideas. I love your stories. I love your suggestions. I love your thoughts. You can always find me on Twitter or Instagram. It's at Ace at Large. On Facebook, it's David Ace Cannon. And I don't know that there's a better example of kind of the way we close this podcast every week than Steve. Because remember, this is the most important thing. One day you will tell your story of how you've overcome what you're going through now, and it will become someone else's survival guide. And I hope that today, that's exactly what your story has become. You survived, what you overcame can hopefully help someone else take some steps forward in moving forward in their lives and leaving their past behind and overcoming stuff and moving forward. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, to come here and talk about this, but I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate
love you to death.
Love you.
We'll see you soon.
This is the new Ace at Large podcast. The new Ace at Large podcast will be back next Thursday.